Okay, this is Coffee with Creators, episode 7. I'm Xerxes. With me is Augie or Ogden, and he is a motorcyclist, he's a vlogger, he also has a day job, and he makes a lot of content while just riding to work and addressing and calling people out for what they are, squids, and addressing the jungle that we have out there. But Augie has been restrained to work from home of late like
Yeah.
most of us. So, Augie, how has Corona screwed you over?
Well, so I was thinking about this because I've been watching some of your previous sessions
Uh,
and good work doing this every now and then.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
for me, I think what I looked at initially as a disadvantage because unlike most of the other content creators, at least in the motorcycling space, everyone does YouTube full time. From what I know, at least from the big guys. But I'm one of the few people who remained to keep a day job and do this, as a hobby. Right? I'm not really loud, and I don't really go out and talk a lot and stuff. So for me, being an introvert, I haven't really seen so much of a negative of being indoors and not interacting with people because yeah, I think I do what I like in my spare time and I kind of continue with that routine. Even I don't get to meet my friends, that's one thing, but I wouldn't meet them often anyway. So, hey.
Right. But what is it about not getting to ride? I mean, how do you?
Initially, when this happened, I saw a lot of other content creators get out their hidden skills because you can't obviously be riding during a lockdown. I mean, some people did, but that's a
Hmm.
different topic for another day. But yeah, and because of that, then what I started looking at is what kind of content could I make sitting inside my home. And that's when I started putting out things like
Hmm.
motorcycle maintenance tips, certain tips and tricks to make your motorcycle a little more comfortable when you go out for a long ride eventually. Motorcycle riding gear, I think that video did pretty well because a lot of people never had information around motorcycle armor, how to look for the right
Hmm.
you're looking for when you think about protective gear and so on, and stuff like that, which was more
Hmm.
a little more educational and informative.
What kind of content is right? What kind of content is not right? What about traveling in this pandemic when you're doing on your own personal travel? Are you, as
Yeah,
a social influencer, maybe is it okay if you travel but not publicize it? If you
mm.
travel responsibly, what, like, I mean, we try to do all the precautions necessary to travel responsibly, avoid
Yeah.
public transport, avoid all of that. But like, I mean, what kind of
Mm.
a message are we giving out there? Are we asking people to stay safe, stay home, and then getting out ourselves? It's super great, right?
So for me, it's not so great, and I'll tell you why. Because um, content in itself, when you put out creative content on the internet, would be judged irrespective, right? So whether
Right.
you're putting out great content and whether you're putting out absolute crap
Hmm.
content, you're going to be judged one way or the other.
Hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, I think you have to have your own set of values in place to understand whether what you're doing is right or what you're doing is completely wrong. If over time you put out content which is consistent with the kind of person that you are, you would eventually
Uh-huh.
attract people who have a similar vibe or who have a similar understanding to life in general as you do. And I
Hmm.
think in a time like this, the people who would follow you would also follow the rules and understand that if you're doing something, you've taken the right precautions to do so, and you follow the right
Hmm.
guidelines to doing something like that. So I don't think you'd be
Right.
judged so much, or I don't think it'll be insensitive because they know the kind of person that you are, and you wouldn't do something like that. But I
Hmm.
think over the years, if you've done mostly clickbait kind of stuff, and you've done reckless stuff in the past, and you've been unnecessarily putting other people's lives at risk, and then you go out and do
Rashing.
something like this during a lockdown,
Yeah.
even if you've taken the right precautions at such a time, you'd still be judged horribly for it because now you've had that reputation over the past.
No, no, one very legit question came from Moab underscore 47. Is vlogging only an art for extroverts? Hmm.
No,
Go
I don't think so. Absolutely not. I think you can stay behind the camera and vlog also, right? How,
on.
like, most of the time, what I've been doing is I've been in.
So, this industry of moto vlogging, right? How long back did you start in it as even a part-time thing? How long back did you start, and how long back did you actually start making money in it?
I think five, maybe 6 years ago when I started, and I never really got into it
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to become famous or whatever. No, I I got into it just purely because I got inspired by people who were doing something similar in the UK and in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized how horrible the situation was for me to just to get to work and back, how risky it was just to do that. Commuting in our city is an achievement in itself. And that's when I started to put out videos about my daily commute. It picked up, gradually over time, and it reached where it has. And I think I only started making money out of it maybe, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because my uploads are so inconsistent or whatever, I don't make like money that I can buy like villas and whatnot and make lifestyle vlogs and shit. But yeah, it's pocket money at the end of the day.
And I haven't seen you venture a lot or anywhere close to travel moto vlogging.
Mm.
Like you will do like a few short trips and maybe you'll make them about reviewing motorcycles. But
Yeah.
I haven't seen you go into the travel thing. And there is a thing, right, where if you're a motorcyclist, then you
Mm.
love traveling and you love to show off where you're traveling. But you don't do that. So is there a specific reason or it's like how does it work for you?
Well, I have not done as many rides as other people would have put out there, and I do some rides also, which I don't really vlog about. Also, I just enjoy them with my friends.
There's one question which came in which said that there are a lot of moto vloggers, that's from Moto Centurion. A lot of moto vloggers, or so-called moto vloggers, who do some illegal and unethical stuff which inspires a large number of youth. How can you make people aware of this? Like how to, yeah, like basically, for example, um, if you're saying you're talking about loud silencers or exhausts or that Delhi Agra expressway ride in like 20 minutes, 1 hour, whatever, and like ripping it, those kind of videos, they get a lot of views. There's a lot of videos of people going really rash on roads and like trying to find top speeds in uncontrolled conditions. How do you, I mean, there is a certain amount
And
of
tears. Ah.
ad adventure associated,
No, no, I can hear
there's a
you.
certain amount of adventure associated with it, and people love to see it because it's adrenaline fueling and it also
Yeah.
inspires them in some way or the other. So, what do you have to say about that?
I spoke about this during a safety ride initiative that I was invited for in Goa.
Mm-hmm.
The way the algorithm works on pretty much every social media platform right now is if a lot of people watch it, a lot of people would then have that video recommended to them. So I think if you're a responsible motorcyclist, A, you shouldn't be clicking on a video which has a title or which shows anything like that. And B, I know that people have very good.
You've been on the track, like Autolog mentioned right now. You've been on the track, you've
Yeah.
been racing on the track, you've been learning how to do it.
Mm.
But I don't think you do it like that on the road when you're driving or riding. But for someone who's watching, who wants to experience the thrill of riding their bikes fast, pushing it, um, what tips do you have for it? Because see, I'm a biker too. I understand the thrill associated with it. I love it when I can rev my bike and rip my bike, but the roads are not conducive for that at all
Yeah.
times. So if you had to do that, and if you had to say people like, yes, you can encourage yourself to push yourself, when and how and where.
So I'm going to be honest. I think all of us at some point in time when we see a really open four-lane highway, we're not going to go at 20. Right? There is going to be that little urge to pull the throttle in and open up a little bit. And I think as long as you know your own personal limits of riding and you know how to brake and control the motorcycle, there's no harm in doing a little bit above the speed limit. Right? As long as you're not endangering anyone's life and it's an open road, you can't see anything for miles or whatever. That's fine. It's you won't really have a lot of controlled environments in India on a public road, but I think that's as controlled as you get. But at the same time, I think before you get into that mindset of, oh, I want to hit my top speed or I want to try and test my that I now picked up later on, which is adding. Yeah, so there was a lot I learned on the racetrack that I would have never been able to learn riding on public roads. I'll give you a very simple example. Vision being one of the most critical elements when you're riding a motorcycle, we tend to look like a few meters ahead of us because in Mumbai traffic, that's where the nearest danger is. There's a car in front of you, he's going to hit the brakes, you're going to go face first into it. But
Hmm.
and because of that, when you're on a racetrack and you're approaching a corner, if you start to look closer, your sense of speed is a lot higher because you're thinking you're going that much fast. But the
Hmm.
moment you just lift your head up a little bit and look a few meters ahead, you realize that okay, it's not that close and it's not that dangerous. I don't need to be making such quick adjustments to the handlebar and everything. So
Hmm.
the first time I went to the racetrack and attempted to, I'll call it an attempt to race because I finished last and the first place guy almost lapped me. Um, I didn't know what I was doing. And then I went to another racing school and I learned level one and level two, got my basics right. And the next time I went, I finished sixth something. So there's a
Hmm.
big difference between what you learn at a racing school and be able to practice on a racetrack compared to what you learn if you go for one of those driving schools. If they even do it for two-wheelers, I'm not too sure. And then go onto a public road and ride. So I think everyone who has the capacity to buy a larger CC motorcycle should first also then invest in a riding school and get better at riding because then you'll be able to handle tricky situations on the road a lot faster.
Yeah, that's what my question was. How much of your racetrack learnings help you on the outside traffic conditions or normal highway driving or city driving? How big of a difference does it make when you take your bike out on, say, Jogeshwari Vikhroli Link Road?
Uh, again, like coming back to vision, right? You start to spot things a lot earlier because your sense of space and your surroundings is a lot better because you've had that experience of riding at a higher speed and knowing what's
Hmm.
going on around you. Again, on a racetrack, you won't have mirrors, so of course you don't know what's going on behind you. But again, that makes you a little more alert to listen to the sounds around you because now you know if there's someone coming to overtake you, you have to be a little cautious when you're leaning in.
Right.
On the street also, I think your understanding of how to brake, I think that's one of my major learnings in the level one training, just simply how to brake. Everyone thinks
Hmm.
you grab a handful of brake and you pray to the gods like no, they're gonna stop. I
Okay.
think that'll
And
make a big difference.
And another thing with motorcyclists, at least in our country, that I've noticed is that we don't have any license grades. So
Yeah,
people can pick up literally any
yeah,
motorcycle if they have the money. And
very true.
um, and as a result of which people don't go to like riding schools, they don't go to racing schools, they're not learning anything.
Mm.
And we have a lot of weekend rides or like one day rides for breakfast and stuff. And
Yeah.
you see people ripping and you see people dying. Literally every Sunday you hear someone or the others died on the road.
Mm.
And that's just given motorcyclists a bad name altogether that like you live short and you just I don't know. I mean, what's your take on this whole situation of like, how do you feel when you hear someone else died today on a motorcycle because they went for breakfast?
And I've unfortunately I've had a few friends also who of people who
Yeah,
I've known who were part of a riding group that I was in previously that who passed away from a Sunday ride. And again, you can't really say whether it was them or it was someone else who caused the
yeah,
accident because these situations are such. But when you're riding at speed, you can expect things to go wrong.
right.
The licensing system, I think there should be that kind of a grading system. But at the same time, I think until that exists, I think we need to make sure. No, I think every time I start a ride, when I reach a certain point away from my house, there's a prayer I say within my helmet because I know this could possibly be my last experience on a motorcycle. And I think most of us go through that. But I think what I go out every time I get on a motorcycle, and especially in a public setting, I always have go out with this assumption that I'm playing Grand Theft Auto and I have a bounty on my head and people are out to kill me. If you go out with that kind of an assumption, I think you'll be a lot more cautious when you're riding around other vehicles.
And so if someone's watching this right now who isn't into vlogging yet, is considering picking up a motorcycle because it wants to be a vlogger, how should they get started? What's your advice to them?
Wait, so they're picking up a motorcycle just because they want to become a vlogger?
Maybe they already have a motorcycle and they're going to pick up a GoPro to become a vlogger. Maybe they're seeing that the moto vlogger space has a little space for them to do some antiques and show up. Like earlier, once upon a time before moto vlogging happened, we all know of people who would like, dude, I fucking popped a wheelie in the back road and I
Yeah.
did this. And there was no place to, what would be your suggestion to people who are getting into the space thinking of that, A? Or be someone who just wants to enter the space as a sane moto vlogger, maybe getting inspired by you. What do they need to get started? How should they get started, etc.
I think the biggest learning for me in the first few years was, and even now for that matter, while we're in curfew or lockdown, is that we need to you need to learn your editing first before you get into actual vlogging. Because Recording is the easy part, man. You'll have 8 hours of footage from a long ride, but you'd sit down and probably put down 10 minutes of it. No one wants to watch the entire 8 hours of what you recorded. So
Right.
telling that story becomes very important. And that's why I'd probably, and again, my editing is nowhere close to these guys, but I still watch them for their storytelling abilities. Sam Colder, there's this other guy, Ben TK, he's on Instagram. I think he's brilliant with his content also. And there's a few others here and there as well. Peter McKinnon, one of the popular ones, Casey Neistat, and
Yes.
understand how they tell their stories and how they let the entire from start to finish just flow seamlessly so that you're engaged throughout the video. So irrespective of what genre of vlogging you're getting into, whether it's lifestyle or motor vlogging or whatever it is, I think that storytelling is a crucial part of it, and that's what will keep your audience engaged throughout. So before you even buy the motorcycle, I think you should sit down in front of a computer and understand how to go about editing your videos, and more importantly, understand what makes you different from the next guy who's motor vlogging. Because there's plenty of us now, right? I've lost count of how many people are doing this, and pretty much everyone's doing the same thing at this point. And no disrespect to them, they've got the numbers and stuff, but everyone's going out there and on long rides, documenting their ride, sharing their stories, and to me as a viewer, because before I'm a content creator, I'm a viewer. I consume a lot of content because I don't upload as much as everyone. To me, it's becoming a bit monotonous to watch the same kind of content just with different faces now. I think people need to figure out what makes them unique, and then come on board and say, okay, fine, this is how I want to tell my story, and this is the story about myself that I want to tell. A very good example, and I keep telling people about this, is a guy called Toll Free Traveler, Rohit. He's become a good
Right.
friend over the past few months, also past few years. Sorry, Rohit,
Yeah.
past few years. Um, and yeah,
Hyderabad, right?
he's from Chennai.
Hyderabad or
Should I
Bangalore or
put me
something?
on the
Somewhere
spot?
down
No,
south.
he's not
Somewhere
from
down
Bangalore. Yeah,
south.
some south.
Yeah.
Pondicherry,
We've
we'll figure
met.
it out,
We've
right?
met. Yeah.
Yeah, so his way of story, I think he jumped onto the scene with just, I think, maybe 2 years ago or something, and he's already crossed 100,000 subscribers because purely of his way of storytelling. No fancy bikes, no fancy transitions. Of late, he started upping his editing game also, but just the calmness and the way in which he edits his videos and tells his stories, I think, makes him stand apart and has got him to where he is. And kudos to that, yeah, because I think that's in its core what motovlogging is all about.
Right. Like you said, right, the stylized edits and transitions that happen when you probably say have a team shooting you. For example, if you see videos like Power Drift, at least closer to home,
Hmm.
and when you see
Yeah.
that like beautiful cuts and slow motions and speed ups. But as a
Mhm.
normal motovlogger who's operating alone in a capacity,
Yeah.
what all does one need to get started besides a motorcycle and a will to ride?
You're talking about in terms of the
The
gear
tech,
that I'd use.
the tech and the gear.
Um, okay, so if you're just getting started, I think what you should be focusing on again is how you tell your story and how you edit. Because I know a lot of people personally when I started this 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, and then it started to pick up over time. A lot of people picked
Hmm.
up a camera, picked up a GoPro, and picked up the fanciest gadget available at that time to record and started putting out maybe one or two videos. Now you would know this, right? When you start off, the initial reward to the amount of effort that you put in would be very, very different,
Marginal,
and
minimal.
yeah, it's a struggle that you have to eventually but they get those helmets and they stick a 40,000 rupee action camera on it and go around claiming that they're vloggers. So that's another risk in itself, right? Because now you want to create content, great, but don't risk your life because of it, right? There's no need to do that. And at the same time, there's other people who would see you doing that and would probably then get inspired by you, and it's a whole another chain
Ball
of,
game
of
that you're
bad.
starting off
Yeah.
altogether.
So yeah, so I
Very
think that's
nice.
the best advice I can give someone who's.
There's a couple of questions that have come in. Mahajan Sarthak's asking, what's your dream bike, Augie?
So my dream bike has changed over the years. Initially, I was thinking something like a Ducati Desmosedici RR, but that's again a very track focused, uncomfortable motor. Yeah, so I got to ride the Tiger 900 GT. I had the opportunity to ride the Multistrada 950S. But I think honestly, from most of the motorcycles that I've had to ride in the recent past, the Adventure 390, the KTM Adventure 390, really stood out for me. I think that had the right amount of it was easy to ride, and it could do a lot of stuff that some of the other motorcycles I've had a chance to ride with couldn't do. Then that's again down to my capabilities as a motorcyclist, not the motorcycle.
But also that about gets the job done in a country like India. You don't need much of like the big powered engines over here. Okay, another
Yeah.
question. Someone's asking, okay, wait, someone, how
Thank
to
you.
ride with ease on a committed riding position for long rides? Wow, okay.
Oh,
Very specific.
so, so I think one of the easiest things I can tell you to do if you're riding a sports bike is you get these they're called traction pads which you can stick onto the tank, which help you grip the tank a lot
Mm-hmm.
easier. They're
Mm-hmm.
relatively inexpensive now because there's so many people making them out here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, understand how to hold the motorcycle with your legs, with your thighs. That takes a lot of pressure off your wrists, off your shoulders, and off your back, irrespective of what motorcycle you're riding. And I think
Mm-hmm.
when we went onto the racetrack, also that was one of the first things that they taught us in the pit lane, that you control the motorcycle, your weight on the motorcycle at least with your legs, not with your by putting all of your pressure on your hands. So that's why when I see
Right.
people riding like this, with their elbows up, I don't understand what they're trying to do. It's so awkward because you have no control over the handlebars and you're not really doing much with the rest of your body either. So, yeah. That's the
Right.
easiest thing
And there's
to do
one.
to take the weight off.
Okay, there's one by Kiman 3680. Augie, if you can't afford a riding school, how can you implement the twist of the wrist on normal roads?
Not a normal road. So if you get a chance to watch Twist of the Wrist, and I think there's Twist of the Wrist 2 also, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember seeing two different videos. But maybe have a look at one section of that teaching you the basics of what you should be doing, and go out into maybe like something like a ground, an empty ground, or maybe a parking lot or something nearby.
And Roshan's asking, how are you so patient on the road, Augie?
Because I'm an introvert. I don't I don't get angry very easily. But so I think over time I realized that the earlier approach which I used to take is showing people the middle finger and cursing them and stopping them at traffic signals and talking to them, trying to knock some sense into them would never really work, and we would both walk away with frustrated minds at the end of that conversation. He thinking, "What who's this jerk to tell me how to
Right,
drive?" and me thinking, "Well, who's this jerk trying to put my life at risk?" So what I started to do
right.
eventually is not have these conversations. I used to then just record the video, and the Mumbai traffic police have a WhatsApp number where you can report traffic violations. So whenever I
Right.
put out a bad Mumbai driver series video, I usually blur out the number plates because it's not my place to go out and publicly shame people. I realize that that's not
People.
my duty.
Hmm.
And over time, I think people can realize that they've made mistakes because of the amount of information available on the internet now, and
Right.
maybe change their ways and become a lot more responsible when they drive or when they're riding on public roads.
Hmm.
So if I put out a video where I show them being complete jackasses, somewhere down the line when they're more responsible riders or
It
drivers, I
might
wouldn't want them
still
to
affect
look at that
them.
video and say, "Oh my God, why am I?" Yeah, and someone come up to me.
Like, I will
Yeah,
take that WhatsApp
be
number
careful
from
out
you.
there,
But
Xerxes. My
it's a
camera's on
freaking jungle
24/7.
out there. But while you are an introvert, you have your motorcycle, your KTM, and you call her Rage, right?
Yeah, rage.
Uh, where did that name come from? Why did she become Rage? Was she channeling your inner rage?
No, so when I bought the motorcycle, I always the previous motorcycle I had was an R15 version 2, which was a red motorcycle, and I called that Red Torpedo. So
Okay.
again, that was based off a motorcycle rider Guy Martin, who his nickname also is Torpedo. So yeah, after that,
Put the raincoat for Bane and take him for a walk. He'll
that's
go.
that's my twin brother Omar. He jumps in
Oh,
every now and then and
no.
reminds me of household duties that I need to complete.
Okay, I think we're done right now. Thanks so much, Augie. Have a good
Thank you.
work week ahead. And
And
ride safe. It's a freaking jungle out there.
sure is it, sure is. Thank you, Darshis. Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you all for joining in. Goodbye.